Last chance to impress if you're a bubble boy on the Buffalo Bills roster, Andy. I wasn't expecting you to laugh. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone. Final preseason game of the summer coming up. Bills, Carolina Panthers at the Bills Stadium. Again, I'm Kevin Carroll. Andy Young with me, as always.
I think you're a bubble boy. The way you said that just caught me so off guard. I was not ready for that. We are already off the rails.
Yeah.
We are not even 30 seconds into this thing.
Well, I don't even want to put it back on the rails, Andy, but we'll try the best we can. And final preseason game, there are guys set. Sean McDermott saying the starters are all good to go. They're not going to be part of the game against the Panthers. Some guys have to impress. Andy, you and I haven't really talked since the game against the Steelers. Maybe the Bills took a step forward from that dud against the Bears in the first preseason game. But one player popped, and he's a local guy, Andy, Joe Andreessen. Heck of a story there, and a lot to digest with this guy that when training camp started, it was a cool story. He's a local guy getting a shot to play for his hometown team. Now it's taken on, especially after the Steelers game, a whole new flavor.
He certainly is the talk of the town. Outside of, do they have the right wide receivers? Are the safeties going to be healthy? Beyond that, everybody is talking about whether Joe Andreessen, rookie tryout player,
unbelievable,
undrafted, gets a shot with his hometown team, and nobody expects much out of him. And he's even said that. Like, nobody's really expecting me to make the team. And he just keeps plugging along and gets the chance to start the second preseason game because of a host of injuries to the linebacking core, and they decide to keep a healthy Terrell Bernard out of the lineup, which was probably a good thing given everything that's gone on. And Andreessen starts at middle linebacker after having been a third-team guy, fourth-team guy through much of training camp. And holy cow, does he just pop off the tape. When you watch him track down Justin Fields and you watch him in the open field diagnose a play, zip right to Jaylen Warren and take him down, leads the team with 12 tackles against the Steelers' starting offense. This wasn't like Joe Andreessen was in the third, fourth quarter, threes against threes, and he's kind of impressive. Like we see a lot of during training camp and during the preseason games. This guy was doing it against the Steelers ones, and it really opened some eyes. And the fact that when he got his opportunity because of the inavailability of some other players in the linebacking core, he really made the most of it. Now they're still a little bit banged up in that linebacking core. So is the door open now for Joe Andreessen, the Lancaster High School product who played his final season of college football at the University at Buffalo, to make this Buffalo Bills team? And I think the door is definitely open. I think he's got a great shot, especially given what's behind the rest of the crew of starters at linebacker.
Where we are right now, it seems realistic. If, say, we're on a different timeline or whatever, we might be talking about, does he make the 53-man roster? Is he like one of the last guys? Is he on the practice squad? To now we sit here and talk about him as a legit player to make the 53-man roster, when I think this conversation could have been a lot different, could have been a lot feel-good, a lot cuter. We've had players from Western New York get a shot with the Bills from time to time, and it's always a cool story. But I tell you what, watching practice like we did before we did the podcast today, even when he's huddling guys up and getting the play, he, to me, is in command of the defense. You can hear it in his voice. You can see it in how his teammates react to him, that he knows what he's doing. He's in command, and he's executing as well.
You are not executing.
Nope.
I think with Andreessen, I don't want to really jump the gun because there is certainly a shot that he does not make this team. Like, this is a guy who was a rookie tryout, undrafted guy as early as April and into May. And here he is. If things are different, if circumstances are different as far as health with Balin Spector and Matt Milano, Nicholas Morrow has been banged up throughout the process, maybe things are different for Andreessen, but he has certainly put himself in the conversation. The interesting part with this is after what he put on film against the Steelers, can the Bills, do they want to risk trying to bump him down to the practice squad and cutting him?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some other team saw that and said, you know what, we could use a young, athletic, developmental type linebacker and bring him in to be their second or third, middle linebacker. I don't know. To me, if you're the Bills, maybe you decide, you know what, we know what we have in some veteran guys. We can always come back around and find, a 30-year-old linebacker who's been around the league a little bit and has bumped around. You don't have the chance often to really develop your own guys that way from the situation Joe Andreessen came from. So I don't think it's a lock that he makes this roster, but I think there's definitely some conversations going on in the front office between Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich and the rest of the crew. Like, can we afford to let this guy go? Is he a guy that could fit into our long-term plans as, a backup type linebacker in the NFL?
And we've seen that with other players that either look like developmental projects or the raw talent. Like, we've seen Bobby Babich do that with other players. These were drafted players, not someone on a rookie tryout, albeit, getting the most out of these players since Sean McDermott has been here, since Bobby Babich, where you have like a Terrell Bernard. What's he going to do now that Tremaine Edmonds is gone? Well, we'll put Bernard in and see what happens. Guys lights out just a couple of years in, and credit the coaching for what they've been able to do. That I think part of what you're saying is right. I think it would be a mistake at this point to not put him on the 53-man roster.
Right. So then it becomes like a numbers game. Who did you let go? Is Nicholas Morrow gone? Is Balin Spector, who is a former draft pick of theirs and a guy they've liked a lot, but just, has been banged up throughout this process? Is he a guy they're willing to let go or try to push down onto the practice squad? It's interesting. One of the cool parts to me is getting to know Joe a little bit throughout this process. I actually did a story on him before the draft when he was hoping to be drafted. And he told me that, he had some interest from several different teams, but one of the teams that was really high on him and had shown the most interest through talks with him and with his agent was the Bills. So they had their eye on him way back, right, in this whole process. Now, of course, they didn't draft him, and they didn't give him an immediate signing right after the draft as a free agent. They had to make him come through and do a rookie tryout, which, by the way, a little nugget I don't think everyone knows. The day before he tried out for the Bills, he had to try out with the Chiefs. Chiefs didn't sign him.
Okay.
He comes and tries out during rookie minicamp with the Bills, and they sign him. A pretty cool story.
If they try to get him to the practice squad, the Chiefs will grab him, and then that'll be a whole nother crap storm that we'd have to deal with.
I mean, who's going to be the better player? Xavier Worthy or Joe Andreessen? That's what we're going to boil this down to, right?
Right. So, in essence, Andy, and we've heard Coach McDermott, players talk about training camp doesn't end when they leave St. John Fisher, but this, with the final preseason game coming up, this is really the end of training camp right now. These guys get one more shot to put something on tape for not only the Bills but other teams around the NFL to keep their NFL dream going. That comes up on Saturday. Sean McDermott seemed pretty positive on how training camp overall went now that all is said and done. He did, in his press conference earlier in the day, talk about how they did not play Buffalo Bills football against the Chicago Bears in the opener, started to get better, wants to see more Bills football this weekend, while acknowledging that the Bills players, main guys, aren't going to be out there on the field.
It's going to be really interesting to watch from a football perspective what the evaluation process is like for, say, the back end of the wide receiver group. Because they've got two quarterbacks in Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown who just joined the team within the last 2 weeks, and in Brown's case, this week.
Yep.
How much can they glean from what those quarterbacks do with those wide receivers? How much does a guy like Tyrell Shavers play? How about KJ Hamler, Justin Shorter, these guys that are perhaps on the fringe of making the roster, how much more difficult is it to evaluate those guys with quarterbacks who really are completely new to the system and may likely just hand the ball off a whole bunch? That's an interesting thing going into this game to watch, because Marquez Valdes-Scantling remains injured.
Yeah.
So he was another guy you're looking at, but I kind of think he's in that top 5 if he's healthy.
Agree.
So then do they keep 6? Is Shavers doing enough both on the field and on special teams? Does KJ Hamler fit into the equation as a return guy? That'll be interesting to see. This Bills team, to get back to your overarching point about where this team is this season, it's kind of like a little bit of a mystery. Like, we know what you're going to get out of Josh Allen, but there are so many new faces. And how does this new leadership group look? There's just a whole lot of unknown. While you think you can kind of pin it down a little bit, when you think you've got continuity in a lot of places with Allen, and it starts there, and, of course, McDermott and Bean, they built something here, a foundation, but how's it going to look a little different with Joe Brady? How's it going to look a little different with Bobby Babich and some of the new pieces on offense and defense? It's really interesting to see. I don't have a great feel for exactly what this team could be. I could see them being around the 500 area, 9-8, 10-7. You could also see them, if they catch fire and do really well, winning 12 or 13 games. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Did you honestly think by this time of the summer we might have an answer to some of these questions? Like, I think maybe if Josh Allen, if it didn't rain out in Pittsburgh, if Josh Allen played, I know I feel I'd have a better feel for what we might be looking at come week 1 against the Cardinals, but it's tough to go off of what Trubisky did as the starter that day. And, you know, Josh Allen now one of the bigger leaders, and you, like you mentioned, new leaders and stuff like that, maybe able to get more. Obviously, he's a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky, but I just feel like we didn't get any answers this summer, so hold on for the first couple of weeks of the season to kind of get an idea of what they're going to be. And I don't even think until mid-October maybe you get a real feel for what this team is at the earliest.
And the teams and coaches will even tell you that they don't really know what they are through the first month of the season. They're still kind of figuring that sort of stuff out. And given that they had so many guys banged up throughout this process, it's going to take a little bit of time for this team to get its sea legs. And it's a tough little opening start for them after the first few weeks. It'll be interesting to see how they perform there. One thing I think that's going to be pretty consistent that I saw throughout the summer, you didn't see a whole lot of it in games, but it's just going to be there, is Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir, Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid, and I think Josh Allen and Curtis Samuel are going to be pretty consistent. I think you know what you're going to get out of James Cook. So I think you're going to see some stuff there, but it's those other X factors. How do other players fit into that equation? How is Keon Coleman used? Can he do what he needs to do to be a big factor? Can he be their, number 2 receiver? Can he fit into that mold? Can he score a bunch of touchdowns in the red zone? Or do the things that people said he struggled with come to fruition, and he struggles with those in the NFL?
Mac Hollins really intrigues me. I got to be honest with you.
He shows up in practice. That is for sure.
Right. Like, I mean, you and I at practice today, standing near the back, he's loud. He is all up in the defensive players' faces when he makes a play. I'm dying to see how that translates to the regular season, Andy. The other thing I was thinking of driving over to practice was the COVID season when they didn't have any preseason games, and how crisp the offense looked in that opener that year. That I've been a big time against not getting Josh Allen some reps during the preseason, but I'm kind of coming around on it that maybe it's just not needed with him, and the offense will be clicking come opening day, and not this big fingers crossed, like maybe a big sigh of relief after the first quarter.
He said that he, at his point in his career, didn't feel it was necessary for him to have to go out there and play in the preseason. But that reps don't hurt. It never hurts unless you get hurt, literally. So that'll be interesting to see. That year was just weird, so it's hard to really glean anything from that. But, you're bringing in Diggs. He already had a rapport with Cole Beasley and John Brown at the time.
Yep.
So it was really just getting used to Diggs. But I can totally see that point. I've brought that up before. Back to your Mac Hollins point. He does seem to show up and make a lot of plays, like in the end zone and practice and things like that. He catches a lot of out patterns on the sidelines. For his career, though, for whatever reason, his receptions, 16, 10, 10, 16, 14, 57 2 years ago was his career high with the Las Vegas Raiders. And then he was back down to 18 catches last year in Atlanta, and he's 30 years old. I just don't see that he's going to have a huge year.
Well, that's why it's intriguing to me, because I can't get past.
This is the best quarterback he's ever had, for sure.
Right. But I can't get past his history with where the Bills kind of have him in their unofficial depth chart as one of the main receivers, just off what they have right now. I watched him during training camp. You watch him during practice. You get it there, but you got to go off of history too, and what he's done during his playing career and where he's at. It'd be amazing. Is just having Josh Allen that much of a bonus to this guy's career, where now he'll be a regular pass catcher in the rotation? I can't get my hands around that.
Well, he's listed as the number one, quote-unquote, X wide receiver on the unofficial depth chart, ahead of Keon Coleman.
Right.
They play a similar position. We've seen them on the field together from time to time throughout training camp. So that'll be interesting. But if Keon Coleman can't, at some point, surpass Mac Hollins and be the regular at that point,
oh boy,
that's an issue.
Right.
So that'll bear watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Big position battles, Andy, that you see going into this final preseason game. Let's start with the offensive line. You and I were talking before we came on. Starters are all set. Mm-hmm. It's the battle for what's behind them.
Right. So you're talking about Deion Dawkins, David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Spencer Brown. You can lock that in. Those guys have been almost throughout training camp in the preseason, minus a few plays here or there, the guys. Those have been the five. So I think you're good there. Then it becomes, all right, I think Ryan Vandemark is a lock as your swing tackle. He can play right or left tackle. I think they like Alec Anderson. He's played a lot of center, can also play guard. Will Clapp, coincidentally, who's listed as the backup center to Connor McGovern, is in the concussion protocol now. So that may hurt his chances.
Not playing Saturday.
Right. He's a veteran presence there. Then you're talking about Richard Garage, who has some versatility at tackle and guard. And then Lyle Collins. That's an interesting thing to me. Does Lyle Collins have enough in the tank left to make this roster? Veteran guy, but he's been through a lot of injuries in his career. Has he done enough? And then you're talking about, do they keep – I think they want to keep Cedric Van Pran Granger, who was a 3-year starter at Georgia and won 2 national titles at center. But he also has played some guard too, and I think they like his versatility to be able to do that. He's a younger guy. And then you're talking about like Tylen Grable, who I did a story on, who's a former high school quarterback who made the transition to a tight end and then transitioned to a tackle and put on some 75 pounds. But he's a freak athlete, and they love that at that position, especially for a developmental guy. So it's, do they want to keep 10? Do they want to keep 11? Is there some battle between the likes of Clapp and Collins, the veteran guys, versus the likes of, say, Grable, Van Pran Granger, and Garage? That's what's going to have to be sorted out here.
Yeah, I get it. On the other side, we'll stick with the line, Andy, because now, gosh darn it. You look at the defensive line, and again, another area where we look at it, and you got your starters there and who the regular rotation is going to be, but it's another position where you're going to need depth. And there's battles going on there for who gets on the final roster behind the likes of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, do you like DeJuan Smoot as your backup defensive end? Do you like Javon Solomon? I think Solomon has certainly shown enough to make this roster. Casey Toohill is getting back in the mix. He's been banged up. As far as defensive ends go, Kingsley Jonathan, the Syracuse guy who's been around this team for a few years now.
Right.
I tend to think they probably keep 5 defensive ends, especially with Von Miller and his status. He's not injured or anything like that, but you just don't know if you're going to get the old Von Miller.
He seemed positive.
He always does.
I know.
That guy? Oh, my gosh.
I think I overheard him talking to someone, not when he met with the media, but say something to the effect of, I hate negative people who think positive things should happen to them. And I'm like, I like that idea. I'm kind of like that. You think positive things happen while you sit around negative.
You?
Yeah.
What?
What, I'm not positive?
I think you're one of those kind of people.
I like to whine a lot. I will say that.
You do, but you almost enjoy it as a sport. So, like,
it is fun to
the
me.
complaining is more of a stir the pot kind of thing for you.
This is true.
And you get a little zip of dopamine out of that.
Get a little rush. Arguing and complaining.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe I'm not positive. But with all this going on.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
One of the bigger storylines at the beginning of training camp is still a big storyline because of injuries at the safety position. Safety position, Andy, right now is a mess. Like, we thought we'd see this battle throughout the summer. Maybe things would start to shape out. But injuries playing a huge role, but they're starting to get healthier at the safety position. But here we are. Training camp is now over. These guys that are getting healthier will not be playing in the final game against the Carolina Panthers. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shapes out at the safety position.
Right. So one of the positive things as we went through the rest of this week, the final week of the preseason, was to see Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards both get back out on the field. Bishop, still wearing the red non-contact jersey, is not doing anything more than individuals and not doing any real hitting or anything like that. He's just not quite there yet. Mm-hmm. For Edwards, he came back a day later off his hamstring, but he seems like he's closer than Bishop. They still got a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks until this regular season opener. But Edwards on Thursday did do a little bit of teamwork.
Hamlin's injured too.
Yeah, Hamler's got a little tweaked hamstring. So that's concerning as well. But I think as far as injuries go, and Sean McDermott said it, we haven't definitively ruled anyone out for week 1 except for Matt Milano.
Which was, to me, incredible to hear when you look at that list of injuries. I mean, I'm not saying that all these people on the injury list, Taron Johnson injured, Curtis Samuel injured, MVS injured, Quentin Morris injured, that's a long list, and the list is even longer than that. But you do have a couple of weeks till the regular season starts. It's final preseason game, a week off, and then the regular season kicks off. Plenty of time to get these guys healthy, Andy. But to say at this point, the only guy that we're ruling out of week 1 is Matt Milano, when you look at some of what's going on, is pretty incredible.
I was a little bit, I wouldn't say shocked, but surprised that, Mitch Trubisky is not ruled out for week 1. Just seeing him kind of limp around at practice the last few days with a brace on, given his knee injury. The Bills have some concerns. If he's not ready to go, they're going to have to find another backup quarterback, because I just don't think you can go into week 1 with Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown as your backup quarterbacks. I just don't see them doing that. It's not impossible, but holy cow, that would not be good.
Ben DiNucci never played for the Broncos last year, right? I know I'm throwing this at you right now.
And he was a former Cowboys guy, too.
Right.
We saw him a few years ago on the Cowboys.
Did well in the XFL, maybe, or whatever one of those leagues were. But
So to see that Trubisky has not yet been ruled out and he's got a couple of weeks to go, that's a good sign. Another thing that was a good sign was Curtis Samuel and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, both still not practicing. One of them was multiple weeks as far as MVS and his neck injury, and Curtis Samuel was week to week with his turf toe type deal.
Yeah.
That those guys aren't ruled out, and McDermott said he had heard in talking with the trainers and the medical staff that there's a good chance those guys are ready. He can't definitively say they're going to be ready to go for week 1, but thinks there's a good chance they will be. That's great news, because that really was going to test their depth. Did they need to go out and get another guy? Were they going to have to bring up guys that they wouldn't have kept previously, put some people on IR? How was that all going to pan out? So if that holds true and you have MVS probably as your 5th receiver and you have Curtis Samuel in your top 2 or 3, that's a much better situation and a lot less concerning. Want to go back to the safeties, and you brought that up. Even though the guys have been banged up, it hasn't changed necessarily my level of concern or lack thereof.
I get it.
I'm just as concerned probably about the safety position as I was, because I just don't know about Taylor Rapp being the main guy. I don't know about Mike Edwards at all, really. Like, he hasn't been a full-time starter throughout his career. I think he started like the final 4 games or something like that of the regular season for the Chiefs last year, and then did some work in the playoffs and was pretty darn good there and started throughout the playoffs. So, and then Cole Bishop just had a long way to go. I think he's the heir apparent answer at free safety, but there's still a lot of questions there, regardless of if those guys were injured or not. So my level of concern remains about the same, no matter who's out there.
Cole Bishop looks like such a little kid when you get up in his face. Like, I interviewed him, but being there at practice today, like, I'm like, oh my God, either A, I'm super old now.
Well, that's true.
To just see that, which.
He's 21 years old.
Right. But he has that little kid look to him. But, yeah, it's interesting that Edwards injured all spring, injured most of training camp, and Bishop coming in as a rookie, missing time during training camp, and both those guys seem to be what the Bills or maybe what we think at the end of the season might be the starting duo. If, you know, who, like you said, who knows Rapp? Rapp had but he was just a role player when you had Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer here.
He's been a starter. I mean, he started for the Super Bowl Rams.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's a different spot. I'm not as confident in Taylor Rapp as I say I would have been, and how could you be, as you were in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, say, 2-3 years ago.
So that's safety remains one of the bigger question marks going in, Andy.
Yep.
And Tyler Bass, also kind of a question mark. It didn't even dawn on me until I heard he's the only one who scored points for the Bills this preseason.
Mm-hmm.
But during practice, he hasn't exactly been on target throughout all of training camp.
This week in particular, he went 4 of 7, I believe, on both days. So
that's not good, but John McDermott says he's confident in him.
Right. So that has kind of raised some panic among Bills Mafia and questions from the media. And he was asked about it today as we record this podcast on a Thursday, right after the final preseason practice. Hey, how confident are you in Tyler Bass at this point? Is he having some struggles? Because we've seen him miss, many kicks during training camp and in practice.
Yep.
And McDermott said, look, I'm confident in T-Bass. Sure, he's working through some things in practice that he'd like to have back, but we're good to go there. So at least publicly, he's putting throwing some water on the fire of the Tyler Bass flame that has been kindled among Bills Mafia and some of our colleagues in the media here who are just reporting what they've seen.
Right. Your season basically ends on a missed field goal.
Right.
And then
he missed the one in the Philly game.
Right. And then the struggles
Yep.
throughout the summer. Good. I say good reason to be concerned about it, but
For sure.
what's Sean McDermott going to say? You know, Tyler Bass is on thin ice. I'm telling you right now.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yep.
If he misses a field goal on Saturday, yoink.
I will tell you this. Watching practice this week, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane were noticeably right there watching Tyler Bass during kicking operations. So, yes, Sean McDermott says the right thing publicly.
Right.
He's got a contract, Tyler Bass. Who are you going to go out that's better? Who are you going to go out and get? So
my
it'll
buddy
be
Edmonds
interesting.
was a kicker.
Okay.
Let's do a little 3 and out, Andy. College football. 4 games on Saturday, including FSU taking on Georgia Tech at noon over in Dublin, Ireland. I am in on that. I'm not a huge college football guy, but I've had enough of preseason football. I want to dive right in to at least that game. I have other obligations on Saturday, but they're not until later in the day.
So does that mean you're not watching the Bills-Panthers 1 o'clock preseason game, and you're going to be watching college football instead on Saturday?
Those preseason games are hard to stomach. I can always DVR it, but holy cow, the two Bills preseason games, I did DVR and watch later on because sat down for the first one with my wife because she's excited, Bills fan, to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked if we could shut it off 2 series into the game. And I'm like, yeah, I'm DVRing it. I'll come back and watch it when you're not around later.
I love me some college football. I'm glad it's back. Nothing like a little Saturday. Maybe you open a little app on your phone and.
I thought you were going to say a little beer. But
Well, that too.
App.
Maybe after you've had a couple of little beers, you open the app and you're like, Ohio State versus Penn State.
Right.
Should we put a little money on this? I'm not advocating gambling, and I don't necessarily gamble myself. But if I were to, I could see some people enjoying that on a Saturday afternoon or evening.
Put a nice parlay together, get yourself some.
Wait for that West Coast game, Oregon versus Oregon State or whatever. Be interesting with the new Big Ten, with those West Coast teams now in the Big Ten. It'll be cool.
And in the ACC.
Yeah, right.
Stanford is
right.
in the ACC.
Right.
Okie dokie.
Yep.
Final summertime fun, Andy. I'm mixing things up in the order on the great sheet of paper I gave you because I still work with sheets of paper.
This rundown could win an Emmy, let me tell you.
Final summertime fun, Andy. Labor Day weekend coming up. I'm going away for a little golf up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire with the fam. Looking forward to that.
You have like 3 places you go, and you always go to them. South Carolina, to see my buddy Edmonds. the White Mountains in New Hampshire,
White Mountains in New Hampshire.
the beach in New Hampshire. Your parents had the beach house.
Sold the beach house.
Right.
Now it's Marco Island in the winter.
Okay. Those are your spots.
That's the 3 places I go. And believe me.
And Williamsville, New York.
My wife is not thrilled that those are the only 3 places we go. We might have to plan a regular vacation at some point during the Bills bye week with just her and I.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Claire.
I need to be a better husband.
Claire, you deserve a nice vacation.
And I need to be a better husband.
Well, that's obvious.
What about you?
I don't know. I don't do a whole lot. I got kids, man. I'm Friday night. My son is in a basketball league. I'll go watch his basketball game.
Not a coach?
I'm not coaching this time around.
Okay.
Saturday, I'm working. Got the Bills preseason game. I have to watch it, unlike some people. And then, Saturday, Sunday, kind of just chilling, whatever. And then, come next week, it's roster cuts on Tuesday, and we're off to the races, as my man.
Off to the races. No overtime in the preseason, and this game they'll run the ball a lot, so maybe it will be 3 hours or less.
Dude, you're gonna see a lot of Darrington Evans and Frank Gore.
Finally, Andy, the weather changing, a little cool at night lately. I'm debating to myself, sitting around, do I like when it gets from being cold to warm, or when this heat that has been pounding on us all summer starts to break and you get some cooler evenings where you're not sweating? And I don't have an answer. I like them equally as much.
Yeah.
I'm not a fall is elite guy. I remember that going around a while because to me it's just the future is so dark and dreary once fall hits that it's hard to be positive. But I do like, towards the end of August, September, you get some days where you're out on the golf course and it's, maybe I might need a little long sleever underneath my golf shirt.
I am not one to give up summer because
Good. You have a pool.
I've got a pool, and then when it's 55 degrees at night, the pool is cold. We don't have a heater.
Right.
I need to invest in a heater for the pool. But I want to enjoy that. You get such limited, beautiful weather in the summer. I don't mind the heat and humidity. It sucks a little bit when you're standing around at Bills practice and training camp and you're just baking in the sun for 3 hours. But I don't want to push that aside because I know how horrible the winter is. And late fall is horrible. And pretty much all of spring is horrible. So give me Buffalo weather from June through mid to late October and keep it hot.
All right.
I don't mind. Like, it's cool when it's, October 1st and it's 68 degrees and sunny and it's 48 at night and you got that chill and it's hoodie season and all that stuff. But you're right. I just don't want to go down that road because I know once Thanksgiving hits, it's just awful. It's a slog, dude. Why do we live here?
The ice, the snow, the sand on top of the ice and the snow,
the salt on your car. Yeah.
Spare me.
Right. But football season.
Right.
That's football weather.
But right now is cool to look ahead to the football season. Andy, so we kicked things off with our Celebrity Bills Fan podcast. We had Shooter McGavin on.
That was awesome. He was great.
We had a blast with that. We're going to continue that.
Go back and watch that or listen to it. It's obviously on our YouTube. It's on Spotify,
and then
Apple Podcasts. Go back and listen to Shooter.
Adam Sandler 2 days later goes on the Tonight Show and just throws everything we couldn't get out of Shooter McGavin on the table. I still haven't heard back since I applied to be an extra, but still fingers crossed.
I said you should be the next Vern Lundquist.
Ooh.
And Happy Gilmore 8. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe by then. There's always hope. But I believe we have Jeff Glor from ABC News lined up.
CBS.
Or CBS.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Sorry, Jeff.
But big Bills fan, national guy. So we have him lined up as our next guy. And we have some feelers out for some other fans, but you and I will keep doing the nitty-gritty Bills stuff throughout the entire season.
Yeah, it's kind of the next evolution of the Buffalo End Zone podcast. We'll have kind of the special one-off celebrities and big-time Bills fans, and we'll get some national-type guests from around the country. But we're still going to be here twice a week with the hardcore football guy stuff, right? What's happened at practice, who's injured, free agent moves, possible trades, all those sorts of things throughout the season. Will be every probably Wednesday, which is typical media days for a Sunday game, and then we'll also have one game nights right after a game. We'll hop on and do that podcast too.
2:00 in the morning podcast always rules, Andy.
Can't wait.
So that's coming up once the regular season starts. We'll be back again before then. You want to tell people what to do? Subscribe.
Can you do it? Try it.
Hold on. Let me give it a try. Subscribe, like.
Comment.
Oh, comment.
Share.
Right. Let everyone know. Go on your friend's phone
if you're
sign them up for the Buffalo End Zone podcast without them even knowing. Then they'll see it, and then they'll be like, this is great stuff.
So even if you think we stink, recommend it to your friends.
Right.
And that way they have to feel the same pain that you do.
Right. Or like I said, just download it to their phone when they're not watching.
I love it.
Set the alert off.
Yeah. Do us a favor. Recommend, like, subscribe, comment. It would please us greatly.
And this is to my family members, too. Give us some help here.
That's your whole audience.
All right. For Eddie Young, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We'll catch up with you again next week.